Good morning. Welcome to Inner Conquest, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and thank you so much for tuning in. So today we're going to talk about assumptions and really break down what those mean. Because when we look at assumptions, a lot of times when people use the word assumption, it's implied that you know how to assume properly. So when you look at an assumption directly, right, like what do we normally have assumptions about? A lot of assumptions are formed when we're younger about how people perceive us. So if you look at assuming, when you assume that, an SP or a girl or a guy is going to think a certain way about you, and then they prove you correct, what happens is you correlate that to accurate judgment of the situation. And when you accurately judge something, right, you create basically a reality loop. Because if you were feeling and thinking a certain way prior to an experience, and then you go into the experience and then it validates your thinking and feeling, you are essentially proved right. So when you get proved right, what that does is that gives your ego a little boost that you're right, and this is how the way the world is, and these are crystallized facts, and they need to be paid attention to, and they need to be observed as laws of the universe and followed in order to live an optimized life, right? So when we look at assumption is all about mobilizing and aligning your emotional state to a knowingness that something is the way it is, right? So when people talk about emotions and feeling, and there's a lot of talk of like, well, you need to not worry about emotions, just kind of focus on the beingness. Well, how do you know you're being something? Well, it feels like certainty of knowing that you are that thing, right? So feelings and emotions to me are just your sensory perceptions of states, right? It's your sensory perception of energy that doesn't have a label on it, right? Well, how do you know? Well, I just felt like it was the right move, right? Like it's all the same shit. So thinking and feeling, the two dynamics you want to master, right? So when you have a goal, you want to think from the end, think as if you are the person who already has it. And additionally, you want to line up your assumptions that you are the person that has it and the world is the way you want it to be in order for you to structure a reality in which you have it the way that you want it. So if you think about an assumption is a unwavering gnosis, knowing that something is the way it is, right? Like I assume if I am not confident that people are going to judge me, right? So think about the structure of that energetic state, right? Like you go into a bar and you're worried and you're like shy and you're like, I hope that I don't say the wrong thing. But your assumption is sending out an electromagnetic pulse to the universe, and people are multidimensional in that they can respond to different frequencies. For example, right? So if you have a woman, right? What is a woman? Just kidding. And she's a mom, right? Or she is a wife, or she is a community organizer, or she is at a job. Every single time that woman, right, is at a different location, she is a different person. Person means persona from Greek. It is Greek for mask, right? So you are who you are, but you wear a persona depending on the situation, which goes to lend validity to identity crafting, right? So an identity is what your I amness identifies with and essentially builds your identity out of. So when you think of an assumption is really an expectation of things to be a certain way. So when you align your subtle energies to expect something and then that thing doesn't happen, how do you continue to persist in an assumption or expectation that something is the way it is, even when your physical reality is not doing that? Well, you have to understand that when you change your fourth dimensional reality, it's lightning fast. Your third dimensional reality, however, is not as fast as your fourth dimensional reality. So if I make an assumption that I go into the bar and everybody loves me, right, and I'm actually holding that assumption properly, like I'm mechanically aligning my thought forms and my energy forms to, be in alignment with the version of me who has that experience, but then I go and, somebody's like, who are you again? Da, 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 da. that is a remnant of the previous assumption that is trying to suck you back into it, right? Because if you have previous assumptions that you've crystallized and hardened into your third dimensional reality, remember, assumptions harden into fact. Really think about that for a moment. Assumptions harden into fact. The importance and gravity of that statement is twofold. Because if you have previous assumptions that have hardened into fact, that means that they are crystallized in your third dimensional reality and you have built them into your reality to be facts, right? So they're stabilized. They don't require any type of internal movement to change them. They've already been established. Now, when you look at the second meaning of assumptions hardened into fact, think about how insane that is for a second. If you can control the facts of your reality through your assumptions, is it not important to understand and control your assumptions at all times and also test this to ensure that your assumptions are favorable, and then also harden a number of assumptions that you did not previously have into facts that would make your life better? Because with that proof, you would be able to control the factual aspects of your reality. This is big, heavy duty shit. So when you have an assumption, it is akin to a vibrational stance, right? So if you think of a karate stance, they're like, get in, fight form. I don't do karate, but like, get in position to fight, right? You hold a stance. What is a stance? A stance is a defined parameter of beingness, right? I'm ready to fight. Surrender stance, I give up, right? Depending on the stance, I'm going to reflect in my world. People are going to engage with me, or if I give up, they're going to, accept my surrender or whatever. So your stance is primarily vibrational in nature, and that is a fixed attitude of being. So if you have a fixed attitude of being, which is a stance, an assumptive stance would be an expectation stance. So an expectation stance of winning, like if you assume that you're going to win, you hold that energetic frequency, that energetic stance of already won, of having already won. And it's a bit tricky because you're not operating with physical, linear, third dimensional aspects of life. You're doing this all on an emotional beingness level, which is essentially you're aligning your subtle energies to expect the outcome you want. Even if that outcome does not come, you hold that assumption and do not accept the validity of those external circumstances. When you look at persisting in the wish fulfilled, what you're doing is you're aligning your fourth dimensional reality, your mind, your emotions, your beingness, your I amness, to already being the version of you who has it, right? So now what you're doing is you're holding that stance. You're resting in the wish fulfilled. You're in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? You've chosen your internal stance and you have made a decision and you are not wavering from it. Now what happens is the sea and the storms of life that have been created from the previous assumptions are going to come out of the fucking woodworks and try and get you to break stance. So what you do when you persist is you hold a vibrational, energetic stance unwaveringly, and you do not accept anything that is not in alignment with that stance. And what that means is it's halfway manifestations. I want to make a couple $1,000s a day. Okay, cool. Well, the other day, you made $900. No, I make thousands and thousands of dollars a day, right? You hold that stance no matter what happens externally. You make a decision internally of an expectation of a type of reality that you are embodying, and you hold that stance internally and you affirm from the I amness that already has it, and you do not break at all. What that does is that cultivates inner discipline in your emotional states and your ability to occupy wanted states. And what happens is, once the universe has exhausted the old paradigms that were built on the previous assumptions, it will conform. And once you have that, it's like Neo in the Matrix, where you're like, oh my freaking goodness, like I can control a greater degree of my reality than I expected by controlling myself to a greater degree than I ever have before. So remember, an assumption is an expectation. It's an energetic stance of something being the way you want it to be. And what you do when you persist in a stance, once you have decided it, you finalize that decision, You persist in that assumption, and anytime external reality tries to come at you and give you something that is not what you want it to, you do one of two things. You go, nope, it's like this, or you go, oh, that's the perfect unfolding on the bridge of incidents. This is who I am, right? This is who I am right now. That's just a perfect unfolding. Everything is perfect. Everything is working out for me. Isn't it wonderful? You give it great meaning because you understand that the third dimensional reality is just catching up with your fourth dimensional reality. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys want coaching, click the link tree below. Other than that, leave comments and video suggestions so I can make some more for you. Other than that, go conquer.